You wake before the sun has made up its mind. The room is cold enough to make the straw in your mattress whisper when you move, and the little pane of oiled cloth at the window glows with the faintest gray. Somewhere outside, a rooster is being dramatic about a world that is still mostly asleep. Beside your bed, the floorboards complain under your bare heel, and you notice, as you do every morning, the dark heads of the nails holding them down. If you enjoy slow, quiet histories like this, feel free to subscribe to Night Pages and like the video so more calm stories can find their way to sleepy listeners. And, before the day grows too smoky, you can leave a quiet note in the comments telling us where you are listening from and what time of night has found you. Perhaps it is midnight in a warm city apartment, or 3 in the morning beside a rainy window, or some hour so late it has stopped having a proper name. Here, in this earlier place, the hour belongs to iron. You live in a house where nothing metal is casual. A nail is not an invisible thing from a paper box on a hardware shelf. It is a small, black, pointed decision. It is fuel burned in the woods, or dragged from wet ground, men coughing over furnaces, hammers falling until hands lose feeling. It is a little piece of the earth persuaded, beaten, narrowed, clipped and sharpened until it agrees to hold 2 boards together. The cottage smells of smoke, wool, damp leather, and yesterday's cabbage making its final threats from the pot. The door hangs on wooden pegs, but the latch is iron, and everyone touches it with a little respect. The chest near the wall has 3 nails in one corner, and 2 in the other, because 5 was what could be spared. It is not pretty, it is honest. Outside, the village wakes in layers, hooves in mud. A cartwheel creaking like an elderly ghost. The smith's shed, still dark, waits with its anvil squat and patient. You imagine the nails inside it, not yet born, hiding in bars of iron stacked against the wall. They are sleeping too, in a way, long and square and dull, unaware that they will be cut into dozens of tiny necessities. A single nail, you have been told, can cost enough to make a person pause. Not a fortune, perhaps, unless the nail is unusually large or the person unusually poor, which is often how history arranges its jokes. But enough. Enough that building a house means counting them. Enough that ships carry them like ammunition. Enough that old buildings are sometimes burned down simply to recover them, which is a rather extreme method of tidying up. You pull your blanket around your shoulders and listen as the first hammer's strike rings from the smithy. It is not loud yet, just one note in the cold morning air. But inside that note is the story of how a nail became precious, not because it was grand, but because the world needed millions of small things, and each one had to be made by hand. By the time you reach the yard, the morning has become pale and thin, like watered milk. A nail lies in your palm. It is not much to look at, a dark little shaft, square rather than round, tapering toward a sharp point, with a flattened head leaning slightly to one side. It has the modest awkwardness of something made quickly by a tired hand. If you found it centuries later in a field, crusted with rust, you might not think of it as valuable. You might think, if you were feeling unkind, that it looked like a dead thorn. But here, with your fingers already stiff from cold, you understand that the nail is a finished journey. Before it could hold a latch, a shutter, a heel plate, a wagon box, or the planks of a roof, it had to pass through more hands than a coin. The ore had to be found. The wood had to be cut. Charcoal had to be burned slowly in covered heaps, watched like a sleeping animal that might wake and ruin itself. The furnace had to be fed. Bellows had to breathe until the air shimmered. Iron had to be pulled from stone as a dirty, spongy bloom, then hammered and folded and hammered again. Bars had to be forged. Rods had to be drawn. At last, some nailer, standing in heat and smoke, clipped off piece after piece and struck each head into shape. All this for one small spike. History has a talent for hiding labor inside objects. A wooden bowl may remember the tree, if you look at the grain. A wool blanket keeps the sheep's ghost curled in every thread, but a nail is quieter. It disappears into wood and does its work in darkness. Like a very serious insect, it does not ask to be admired. It simply prevents your shelf from dropping your crockery onto the floor, which is a heroic service, especially if you own only 3 bowls and one of them already leaks. You watch the smith's apprentice carry a bundle of iron rods across the yard. He is red-eyed, thin-wristed, and wearing an expression that suggests breakfast has betrayed him by not arriving sooner. The rods clink together softly. Each one is potential. Each one is a row of future nails, maybe hundreds, depending on thickness and patience. The apprentice sets them near the hearth, where the heat has begun to gather. Sparks crawl upward into the dim rafters. The smith picks up a finished nail and rolls it between thumb and forefinger. His nails, the ones on his hands, are blackened and split. There is probably a joke in that, but no one here has enough energy to enjoy it properly. He tells you to notice the head. Without it, the spike would pass through the board like a thought through a sleepy mind. Notice the square shank. It bites wood differently than smooth wire will in later centuries. Notice the unevenness. Every nail is similar, not identical. A small family of iron cousins with blunt heads and sharp tempers. You close your fingers around it. It is cold now, but you can almost feel the heat that made it. A nail seems tiny only when you forget the forest, the mine, the furnace, the hammer, and the hungry patience behind it. Before the nail is iron, it is earth with an ambition. You follow the path beyond the last cottages, past hedges wet with dew and fields, where the soil clings to your shoes in heavy brown cakes. The air smells of frost, dung, and leaf mold. It is not a romantic smell, unless romance for you includes a ditch full of water and a man arguing with a shovel. History is generous that way. It offers atmosphere whether or not anyone has washed. The ore is not always found in a grand mine with deep shafts and lanterns swinging in black tunnels. Sometimes it lies near the surface, in bogs, banks, or reddish patches of ground that stain the fingers. In some places, people gather bog iron, nodules formed slowly in wet earth by water, roots, and patient chemistry. In others, they dig open pits or narrow workings into hillsides. The important thing is not that the earth looks impressive. The important thing is that it contains enough iron to be worth discomfort. And discomfort arrives early. You step into a shallow trench where men have been cutting at the bank. The clay wall is striped with rust colors, orange, brown, purple, black, and damp seams. A boy kneels with a basket, picking lumps from the mud. His hands are red with cold and ore dust. A woman breaks larger pieces with a hammerstone, listening for the dull crack that means useful weight inside. Someone sneezes. Someone else says the sneeze sounded expensive and should be saved for market. The ore itself is disappointing if you expected treasure. It does not shine like a king's cup. It looks like stubborn dirt, like clotted blood dried on a stone, like something a sensible person might throw away before lunch. Yet in every basket, carried back over the rutted track, is the distant promise of hinges, knives, hoops, tools, and nails. So many nails. The future sleeps in ugly lumps. You lift one. It is heavier than it looks, damp and gritty, leaving a rusty smear across your palm. Beneath your fingernails, cold mud presses in with the calm confidence of an invading army. This is the first price of the nail. Not money, but backs bent in weather, boots leaking, fingers numbed around handles, and the slow separating of useful stone from useless stone. No one here speaks of supply chains. They speak of rain, carts, and whether the road will hold. If the wagon sinks, the ore does not care. If a wheel cracks, the ore waits in the mud like a sulking nobleman. Everything needed for iron is heavy. Ore is heavy. Charcoal is bulky. Bellows are hungry. Hammers are honest but rude. A nail begins not as a tiny thing but as a logistical complaint. You walk behind the cart as it lurches toward the furnace site. Mud sucks at the wheels. The track twists between bare trees. A raven watches from a branch, black and elegant, contributing nothing. Your shoulders ache even though you carried only one basket. The people ahead of you have carried hundreds. When you glance down at your stained hand, you try to imagine the finished nail, straight, dark, obedient, disappearing into timber. It seems almost impossible that such a clean purpose could come from such a wet and awkward beginning. But this is where it starts. Long before the hammer rings, before sparks fly, before a nail head flattens under a final blow, someone must persuade the earth to give up a little of its hidden iron. Iron is not made by ore alone. The furnace is hungry before it is useful. And what it wants is a forest, cut down, stacked, covered, watched, and turned into black fuel. So you spend the next morning among the charcoal burners, where the trees stand thin at the edge of a clearing, and the ground is powdered with old soot. The air tastes bitter. Your throat notices immediately, and files a complaint that no one reads. A charcoal clamp rises before you like a low sleeping hill. Beneath its blanket of turf, leaves, and damp earth, carefully stacked wood is smoldering with little air. The trick is to burn it without letting it truly burn. Too much flame, and the wood becomes ash, which is useful mainly for making everyone cross. Too little heat, and the pile sulks as ordinary wood. But in the controlled smoky middle, the wood changes. Moisture leaves. Volatile parts drift away. What remains is charcoal, light, black, fragile, and fierce enough to feed the furnace with the heat iron demands. The charcoal burner walks around the mound with a long pole, opening vents, closing vents, reading smoke like a book written by an unpleasant uncle. Blue smoke, white smoke, thick smoke, thin smoke. You pretend to understand, because standing near him with confidence feels warmer than admitting ignorance. His face is lined with soot. His beard has accepted its fate. When he smiles, his teeth look startling, as if someone has opened a clean drawer in a burned house. He tells you that a poor burn wastes wood, time, and temper. A good burn may last days. Someone must watch through dusk, through rain, through the hour when the stomach growls, and the mind begins to imagine the mound breathing. You pick up a cooled piece of charcoal. It is almost weightless, ridged with the memory of bark. It blackens your fingers instantly, which seems petty but effective. When dropped, it breaks with a dry sound. In the furnace, though, this brittle thing will burn hot and clean, allowing ore and fire to meet at temperatures ordinary wood struggles to reach. The furnace itself waits not far away, a squat shaft of stone and clay, patched, scorched, and older looking than anyone admits. Bellows stand beside it, made of leather and wood, ready to shove air into the heart of the fire. Without air, the fire is lazy. With air, it becomes a red, roaring appetite. The furnace does not care that you are tired. Furnaces are famously poor conversationalists. Men carry baskets of charcoal toward it, the black pieces whispering together like dry bones. Others bring roasted ore, cracked small. The rhythm of the work is slow, then sudden. Load, blast, watch, adjust, sweat, curse softly. Pretend the curse was a prayer if a child is nearby. Smoke slides through the clearing and catches under your eyelids. Your clothes absorb it. Your hair will remember it for days. Even the trees beyond the clearing seem tired of smelling themselves turned into fuel. You begin to understand why a nail carries more than iron. It carries acres of labor and woodland. It carries the discipline of fire held just below disaster. It carries nights when someone stayed awake so a mound of covered wood could become the black heart of metalworking. By evening, the furnace mouth glows. Charcoal settles inward, red at the edges, collapsing softly. Sparks lift into the dim air. The nail is still far away. But now, at last, the heat that will make it possible has begun. The bloomery does not look like a place where miracles happen. It looks like a squat clay chimney with a bad temper, standing in a clearing churned by feet, ash, and spilled ore. Its sides are cracked and patched. Its mouth glows dull red. Around it, people move with the careful irritation of those who know fire is useful, expensive, and absolutely not their friend. You stand back at first, because the heat leans outward and presses against your face. Even from several paces away, your eyes water. The furnace breathes through the bellows, great leather lungs worked by hand or foot, depending on the arrangement. In, out, air rushes through a clay tuyere into the charcoal bed. The fire brightens, sparks leap. The ore descends slowly through the heat, changing in darkness where you cannot see it. This is not yet the later blast furnace pouring liquid iron in glowing streams. In this older bloomery, the metal does not fully melt into a shining river. Instead, inside the furnace, iron oxides in the ore surrender oxygen under the influence of charcoal and heat. Slag forms from the waste minerals. Iron particles gather together into a rough, spongy mass called a bloom. It is not elegant. It is not clean. It resembles something a dragon might cough up after eating a fence. Still, it is iron. The workers charge the furnace in layers. Charcoal ore. The order matters. The timing matters. The air blast matters. Too cold, and the ore remains stubborn. Too hot, or poorly managed, and the result may be ruined, lost in slag, or transformed in ways no one wanted. The furnace keeper watches the color of the fire, the sound of the blast, the behavior of the slag tapping from below. He reads heat with his whole body. You read only discomfort. Your cheeks sting. Sweat gathers beneath your collar, then chills when the wind crosses your back. The smoke carries charcoal bite, hot clay, and a mineral smell like whetstone being threatened. The ground crunches underfoot with old slag, glassy and black in places, greenish in others, each lump a fossil of some previous argument between earth and flame. At last, when the burn is judged ready, the furnace is opened. This may mean breaking part of the clay wall or pulling the bloom through an arch, depending on the furnace. Either way, it is not tidy. Men with hooks and tongs strain together. The bloom emerges dark, blazing in cracks, clotted with slag, heavy and irregular. It lands with a thud that you feel in your shins. It is difficult to believe this ugly mass will become the slender bar that becomes the rod, that becomes the nail that holds your shutter closed against winter wind. The bloom is carried or dragged to a stump or an anvil stone. While it is still hot, hammers fall. The first blows do not shape so much as punish. Slag squirts and flakes away. Sparks scatter like frantic insects. The bloom compacts, folding inward on itself, becoming denser. Men turn it, hammer it, reheat it, hammer it again. You smell hot iron now, a dry metallic scent beneath the charcoal. Your ears fill with the rhythm, breath of bellows, grunt of effort, ring and thud of hammer, hiss where some bit of slag meets damp ground and dies dramatically. This is the second birth of the nail, though it still has no point, no head, no name. It has only become possible. A bloom is iron, but it is not yet useful iron. It must be convinced. You arrive at the forge while the morning is still blue, and the roof beams drip with condensed smoke. The bloom, or pieces of it, have been reheated in the hearth until their edges glow orange. They look less like treasure than like half-burned loaves stolen from a very dangerous oven. The smith lifts one with tongs, sets it beneath the hammer, and nods. Then the work begins. The hammer falls with a sound that enters your bones, not the bright little tap of a nail being finished, but a deep, commanding blow. In some places, a water-powered hammer may do part of this work, lifted and dropped by a turning wheel, patient as machinery can be and merciless as weather. In smaller shops, arms and shoulders provide the rhythm. Either way, the iron is struck while hot, compacting its fibers, squeezing out remaining slag, welding particles together into something more reliable. The first blows are messy. Black flakes leap away. Slag sweats out in sparks and shining droplets. The iron groans without making a sound. The smith turns it, strikes it, folds, or works it lengthwise, trying to draw the mass into a billet, then into bar. Wrought iron is not poured into neat perfection. It is worked. That word sounds simple until you watch a man spend hours persuading a stubborn lump to become straight. You stand near the wall where old tools hang. Tongs with jaws like beaks, hammers with polished handles, chisels, punches, swages, and odd iron shapes, whose purposes are known to everyone except you. The smith's apprentice works the bellows. The fire brightens around the bar. Charcoal collapses inward with soft clicks. The metal emerges again, yellow-orange at the core, darker at the edges. The smith places it on the anvil and draws it out. Blow after blow lengthens the iron. It becomes a rough square bar, still uneven, but now imaginable as stock for tools, straps, hinges, rods, and nails. Every reheating costs fuel. Every blow costs strength. Every inch of straightness is purchased by attention. If the bar cools too much, it resists. Strike cold iron, and you may crack it, or damage tools, or simply make a noise that says you are optimistic in the least helpful way. So the rhythm is heat, hammer, turn, hammer, heat again. The forge day is a circle drawn in fire. At last, several bars lean against the wall to cool. They are not glamorous. Long, square, dark, slightly twisted in places, they look like iron sentences written by a tired hand. But compared with the bloom, they are civilized. They can be traded. They can be carried. They can be reheated in smaller sections. They are the form in which iron begins to travel toward ordinary life. You run your fingers near one cooled bar, not touching until warned it is safe. Even then, it feels dense, definite, quietly expensive. Somewhere in its length are future nails, waiting like seeds inside a winter branch. The smith wipes his forehead with the back of his wrist, leaving a black streak. He looks at the bar and sees not one object, but many possible objects. A hinge leaf, a chain link, a hook, a knife back, 100 nails, if drawn thin enough and cut carefully. The nail is coming closer now. Not as a glittering invention, but as a consequence of repeated heat and labor. A consequence with a square body, a sharp point, and a head hammered flat by someone who would very much like to sit down. By the time most people want breakfast, the smithy has already been awake for hours. You enter through a low doorway and pause while your eyes adjust. The room is a cave of heat and shadow. The forge glows at one side, banked in charcoal, breathing when the bellows move. The anvil stands in the center, like a black altar to practical suffering. Around it lie bars, rods, hammerheads, tongs, broken horseshoe pieces, and a suspicious bucket no one invites you to inspect. The smith is making repairs before the day's larger work begins. A farmer has brought a cracked chain link. A woman needs a pot hook bent back into shape. The miller wants a strap mended and looks offended by the existence of delay, as millers often do in stories and possibly in life. Everyone is waiting for iron. Everyone is pretending their need is small. No one believes anyone else. You take a place near the wall, out of the way. It is the safest place to be useless. The smith heats the chain link until it glows, then closes the crack with quick blows. His hammer is not wild. It lands where he means it to land. The apprentice turns a rod in the fire and watches its color. Too dark, and it will not move. Too bright, and it may crumble or burn at the edges. Iron has moods, and the smith has learned them the way a sailor learns clouds. In one corner sits a nail header, a small iron tool with a hole through it. Later, a heated rod will be cut nearly free, pointed, snapped off, and placed through that hole so its end can be flattened into a head. It looks simple, which is how many difficult things disguise themselves. Beside it is a hardy or chisel edge for cutting hot iron. Nearby, a bundle of nail rods waits, thin square rods, drawn from larger stock, each one destined to become a line of nails. A boy arrives with a hinge that has lost a pin. A carter needs a tire nail. Someone asks whether a bent nail can be saved. Of course it can be saved if enough patience remains in the world. Old nails are straightened, sorted, reused. Nothing iron is thrown aside unless it has truly given up or hidden itself too well. You see why nails matter here not as abstractions, but as little units of security. A loose shutter means wind. A loose shoe means a limping horse. A loose box spills grain. A loose wagon plank scatters goods in the road, where mud accepts them with enthusiasm. Nails are small agreements against chaos. They say, stay there. They say, not today. The smith finally turns toward the nail rods. He chooses one and places its end in the fire. The square section is even, narrow, and dark. Soon it will glow. Soon the rhythm will become fast. Heat, point, cut, head, toss aside, repeat. A good nailer can make astonishing numbers in a day, but astonishing is not the same as easy. Repetition has its own cruelty. The wrist learns the motion. The shoulder pays the bill. Outside, sunlight has reached the yard. Inside, the forge makes its own sunrise, orange and restless. You realize that before breakfast is over, the village may have already consumed a dozen small acts of ironwork. A mended hook, a tightened strap, a saved nail, a sharpened tool, a promise that wheels and doors will hold for another day. And now, with the rod glowing at the tip, the smith lifts his hammer. The making of nails is about to begin in earnest. Before a nailer can make nails quickly, the iron must be made thin enough to surrender. You have already seen the bar, square, dark, and stubborn, leaning against the wall like a length of frozen night. It is far too thick for ordinary nails. To turn it into nail rods, the smith heats one end and draws it out under the hammer, reducing it again and again until the section becomes narrow, even, and manageable. The word drawing sounds delicate, as if the iron were being sketched. In truth, it is being stretched by heat, hammer, and persistence, which is less poetic but more likely to blister your palm. The smith places the end of a bar into the forge. Charcoal glows around it. The metal reddens, then brightens. When the color is right, he pulls it free and lays it across the anvil. The hammer falls in angled blows, first on one face, then the next, rotating the iron so it stays square rather than flattening into a useless ribbon. Each stroke lengthens the hot portion a little. The bar narrows, reluctantly, as if embarrassed by becoming useful. The apprentice straightens a cooling rod by tapping along its length. It rings lightly, a higher note than the heavy bar. Several finished rods lie together, thin and square, their surfaces scaly and dark. They look almost humble, yet this is the form a nailer wants: iron small enough to heat quickly, point quickly, cut quickly, and head quickly before the glow fades. Quickly matters. A nailer working by hand does not wish to reheat every tiny piece separately if it can be avoided. The rod end is heated, then the point is formed while the rest remains cool enough to hold or manage with tongs. A few strokes make the taper. A cut nearly severs the nail from the rod. A twist or snap frees it. The little hot blank goes into the header, and the head is upset with rapid blows. If all goes well, a nail drops away, ugly, useful, and still warm with effort. But the speed of that final dance depends on the rod being right. Too thick, and each nail wastes iron and time. Too thin, and it bends like a bad promise. Uneven, and the nailer must correct constantly, losing rhythm. In nail making, rhythm is money, and also the only thing keeping the mind from wandering into despair before noon. You pick up a cooled rod with permission. It is surprisingly lively in the hand, lighter than the bar, still rigid, with sharp corners that press into your skin. Along its length are tiny marks from hammer and scale. Nothing about it is perfect. Everything about it is serviceable. That you are learning is one of the great words of old material life. Serviceable means it will do. It may not charm anyone. It may not be mentioned in poems. It will hold the roof. By late morning, a bundle of nail rods is tied with scrap cord. They are ready to travel, perhaps only across the room, perhaps to a nailer's small hearth in a cottage, perhaps to a workshop where many hands will strike in repeating rhythm. They are not nails yet, but they are close enough that you can almost hear the future tapping. In these narrow rods, the nail has taken its final long shape before being cut into many small ones. The world has made the iron thin. Now, it only has to make it sharp. You stand in the nailer's room while the fire breathes against your shins, and the rest of you remains faintly cold. The place is too small for the work it contains. Soot has made a second ceiling under the true one, and every beam above you seems to have been smoked like a ham. On the bench waits the nail header, a block of iron with a hole through it, plain as a stone and almost as patient. It does not look miraculous. It looks like something a tired person might stub a toe upon, curse softly, and then depend on for the next 40 years. The rod in your tongs is orange at the end, not bright enough to be cheerful, but bright enough to warn your fingers away. You have already drawn the shank out, tapping and turning, making a square little length of iron taper toward its point. Now comes the awkward part, the small astonishing trick that turns a sharpened bit of metal into a nail. You slip the hot shank through the hole in the header. The point drops below. The blunt end remains above, swollen with heat, waiting to become a head. It is a poor arrangement for elegance. One hand holds the tongs. One hand wants the hammer. Somewhere a third hand would be useful, but history, in its stingy way, has not issued you one. The nail wobbles in the header. The iron loses color. The master beside you makes a sound that might be advice, or merely the noise of a man who has watched too many apprentices insult metal. You strike. The first blow flattens the end a little, spreading it like dough under a rolling pin. If dough could burn a hole through your apron. You strike again, turning your wrist so the head forms evenly. A nail head is not a grand thing. It will spend its life hidden in wood, bruised by another hammer, and possibly blamed for squeaking. Yet without that head, the nail would slide through the board like a very determined splinter. The head is the promise that the wood will be held, that the hinge will not fall, that the roof will remain politely overhead. The nail header allows this promise to happen quickly, or what passes for quickly, in a world that measures production by aching shoulders. Before such tools, a smith could still upset and shape a head. But the header makes a small socket of certainty. It grips the shank while you batter the end into usefulness. It creates sameness, not perfect sameness, never that, but enough that a carpenter can trust one nail to behave somewhat like the next. You'll lift the finished nail and drop it into the cooling tray. It lands among its brothers with a dry little clink, the sound of money pretending to be debris. Each one is crooked in its own private way. Some heads lean. Some points are proud and cruel. Some look as if they have made poor choices. Still, they will hold. That is the miracle. Not beauty, but stubborn service. Outside, the evening thickens around the workshop. Inside, the header waits for the next glowing shank. Again and again the hole receives the iron, the hammer falls, and a tiny cap is born at the top of a spike. It is repetitive, cramped, and faintly absurd, like teaching a beetle to wear a hat. But when you imagine a whole house fastened together by these little hammered hats, the absurdity becomes almost tender. The world is held by small flattened accidents, made one at a time while someone sweats in the dark. You begin with a rod of iron that seems too long, too plain, and somehow disappointed in you. It rests near the forge in a bundle with others, each a dark narrow line waiting to be divided into inconvenience. The nailer does not make a nail so much as persuade iron to endure small humiliations. Cut it, heat it, point it, hammer it. Repeat until the day is gone. Your back has become a complaint, and the bucket at your feet makes sitting down a serious decision. First comes cutting. The rod is measured by eye and habit, not by any kind instrument that would flatter the modern soul. You learn the length for a lath nail, a floor nail, a rosehead nail, a spike. The chisel bites. The hammer falls. A short piece snaps free, sometimes neatly, sometimes with a twitch that sends it skittering into the ashes. You retrieve it because iron is not to be wasted. Nothing in this room is to be wasted, except perhaps youth, which goes into the work quite freely. Then heating. The small blank is placed in the coals, and the bellows urge the fire into a brighter mood. The air tastes metallic. Your eyes water. The iron changes from black to dull red, then to orange, passing through colors that feel less like beauty than warning signs. You pull it out before it burns, because burned iron crumbles and makes everyone look at you as if you have insulted the family Bible. Now pointing. On the anvil, the heated end is drawn down with quick angled blows. You turn the blank a quarter each time, keeping the shank square. Tap, turn, tap, turn. The point lengthens. The iron narrows. It is not the delicate point of a needle, but a useful wedge, made to split fibers and force a path into wood. Every strike must land before the heat fades. The metal darkens, as though embarrassed. Back to the fire if you are too slow. Hammering gives the nail its body. The shank must be straight enough to drive, thick enough to hold, and not so clumsy that it splits the board like an axe. You feel for it through the tongs and the rhythm, because written instructions would be a kind of joke here. The anvil answers every blow with a ringing note. After a while, the sound enters your bone. Even when you step outside, you will hear phantom hammering behind the sheep, the rain barrel, and your own thoughts. Last comes heading, the fussy finale. The shank goes into the header, the hot end is upset, and the hammer spreads it into a cap. This is where haste ruins things. Strike too weakly, and the head is small. Strike too hard, and the shank bends. Strike off center, and the nail forever looks over its shoulder. The process is simple, in the way hunger is simple. Anyone can name the steps. Fewer can do them for hours without spoiling half the batch or blistering their palms. Cut, heat, point, hammer. The words are tidy. The work is not. It smells of coal, iron scale, wet wool, leather, and persistence. It leaves black dust in your hands and sparks in your sleeves. By night, a pile of nails has grown where there was only rod. Not a mountain, not riches exactly, but a measurable day. Each nail remembers the sequence, the chop that made it separate, the fire that softened it, the blows that narrowed it, the heading that made it hold. You lie down later and feel the motions continue in your wrists, as if sleep itself must be heated, pointed, and hammered into shape. You do not ask for 3 nails, not if you are building anything more ambitious than a loose shelf and a private hope. Nails belong to multitudes. They vanish into work, the way grains vanish into bread, each one small, each one necessary, each one briefly noticed only when missing. So in the yard, in the warehouse, at the ironmonger's counter, they are counted in great numbers, by the 100, by the 1,000, by weight, by keg, by whatever method allows a tired seller and a suspicious buyer to agree before the candles burn down. 1,000 sounds excessive until you stand beside a half-framed house and begin to count. Boards need fastening, laths need pinning, shingles need fixing, hinges need screws when screws can be had, but nails and spikes still crowd the job. Flooring swallows them row by row. Doors consume them at the battens. Window frames ask for their share. A fence, if you are foolish enough to desire one, eats nails with the appetite of a goat in a linen shop. You hold one nail in your palm. It is so small that your mind tries to cheapen it, but the old price is not in the object alone. It is in the rod drawn from the bloom, the charcoal burned, the ore dug, the wagon hauled, the smith paid, the nailer bent over his anvil. It is in the child turning a wheel, the woman sorting sizes, the merchant keeping accounts. A single nail carries a crowd of laborers on its narrow back. Rude of it, considering how little back it has. Selling by the 1,000 also solves a problem of patience. Imagine counting nails one by one for every carpenter who comes through the door. 1, 2, 3. Instead, nails are bundled, weighed or measured into known quantities. The maker learns roughly how many of a size make a pound. The buyer learns what 1,000 nails will cost, and whether his purse can survive. The language of nails becomes a language of scale. Penny sizes, lengths, heads, purposes. Some are tiny enough for trim, almost polite. Others are spikes, blunt instruments with a professional interest in beams. The word 1,000 keeps them in their realm. It says, do not be fooled by smallness. The house is not held by one heroic nail in the corner. It is held by repetition, by ordinary fasteners disappearing into wood. You watch the ironmonger pour nails from one container to another. They make a sound like dry black rain. His hand moves through them, checking for mixed sizes, broken points, poor heads. He may sell them by weight, but trust still lives in the eye and fingers. Too many flawed nails and the carpenter will remember, especially on a ladder in sleet. 1,000 nails is also a promise that work may continue without stopping. There is comfort in abundance, even when the abundance is heavy, oily, and eager to puncture sacks. The keg in the corner means the roof can be finished before weather comes. The bundle means the wagon can be repaired before market day. The count means time has been stored in iron. So you learn to think of nails, not as individuals, though each was once handled, heated, struck, and headed, but as a dark collective presence. They wait in barrels and boxes, anonymous as seeds. One by one, they will disappear into walls, floors, doors, coffins, cradles, wheels, barns, and ships. Sold by the 1,000, because life itself is assembled in thousands of little attachments, most of them never thanked unless they fail. You walk beside the carpenter at dawn, carrying a leather pouch that drags against your hip with spiteful weight. Inside are spikes, not modest nails of lath and trim, but square iron persuaders meant for posts, beams, sills, and places where wood must be told firmly to remain. The carpenter has counted them already. He counted them last night by the fire, again before breakfast, and now, because trust is best left to poets, he counts them once more. His fingers move over the spikes, with the tenderness of a miser and the suspicion of a magistrate. 1 for the corner post, 2 for the brace, 4 for the sill where the damp will try, year after year, to invite rot inside for tea. He mutters quantities under his breath. You might think he is praying, and perhaps he is. A carpenter's prayer often sounds like arithmetic. Every spike is money, labor, and time. Bend one, and it is not merely a bent spike. It is a delay. It is a trip back to the smith. It is the owner narrowing his eyes. It is the apprentice, meaning you, being instructed in language not approved for church. The carpenter knows this, and so he does not toss iron about like gravel. He sets each spike near its future womb. The frame lies before you in pieces, smelling of fresh sap and sawdust. Morning mist clings to the grass. The beams are squared but still enormous, full of knots and old stubbornness. When the men lift them, shoulders press into wool, boots slide, and breath comes out in white clouds. The carpenter watches the joints. Pegs will do much where joinery is fine, but iron spikes have their role, securing plates, fastening boards, bracing compromises that appear when timber is not perfect. He chooses a spike and sets it point down. You can see its handmade irregularity, the squared shank tapering unevenly, the head broad and battered. It looks less manufactured than persuaded. The carpenter taps it once to seat it, then drives it with heavier blows. The sound is deeper than small nailing, a wooden thud under the iron ring. The beam accepts the spike grudgingly. Fibers crush. Sap darkens around the entry. Somewhere, a worm who had made long-term plans is forced to reconsider. The carpenter does not drive wildly. He listens. Too much force may split the timber. Too little leaves the head proud, waiting to catch sleeves, skin, and insults. He angles a spike when needed, clinches another through thinner stock, and pauses to inspect each head as if it might confess. You begin to understand why he counts. A missing spike changes the order of work. A shortage near sunset becomes a night of worry. If rain comes before the roof boards are secure, the whole building seems to sag in spirit. Iron makes planning possible, but only if there is enough of it. And enough is not a feeling. Enough is a number. By afternoon, your pouch is lighter, and your hip less bruised. The frame rises, awkward and magnificent, against the pale sky. The carpenter counts what remains, and gives a small nod. Not happiness exact. Carpenters avoid alarming displays, but satisfaction, perhaps, or the absence of disaster. You look back at the joints where spikes have vanished. Their heads remain visible, dark spots in the new wood. Humble as moles, they will rust, stain, hold, complain silently, and be forgotten. Yet the carpenter will remember the count. He will remember how many went into the sill, how many into the brace, and how one nearly bent because someone held it poorly. The building is standing, and some histories are best left nailed shut. You enter the finished house, and it seems, at first, to be made of wood, plaster, smoke, and the private smells of living. There is bread cooling near the hearth. There is damp wool by the door. There is a cradle in the corner, a chest under the window, and a roof overhead making its quiet promise. But beneath the ordinary scene, hidden in joints and boards and fittings, the house is also made of iron. Not much at once, but everywhere in small dark decisions. A nail holds the floorboard beneath your boot. Another grips the lath behind the plaster, buried like a secret under lime and hair. Nails climb the stairs in rows you do not see. They pin the shingles above you, where rain searches for weakness with the patience of a creditor. They fasten battens to doors, secure trim, bite into cupboards, and sit inside the threshold everyone steps over without gratitude. The hinges are more obvious, iron straps curling across the door like black arms. Yet even the hinges depend on fasteners. Without nails or spikes, the grand hinge is only a decorative threat lying on the floor. The door itself, broad planks joined and braced, needs iron to resist warping, weather, and the enthusiastic shove of relatives arriving uninvited. You lift the latch and feel the whole system move: wood, pin, strap, nail, hand. Civilization in one creak. Roofing reveals the hunger most clearly. A roof is a disciplined field of repeated pieces. Shingles overlap like feathers, each one needing to stay put while wind fingers beneath the edges. Wooden pegs may serve in some places, weights and thatch in others, but where nailed shingles spread across towns and farms, nails multiply by the thousands. Each shingle asks for one or more bites of iron. The roof becomes a dark constellation of hidden points, all aimed downward, which is comforting if you do not think about it too long. Inside walls, nails disappear completely. They hold laths, that hold plaster, that holds the room's smooth face. Guests admire the whitewashed surface and never imagine the forest of small iron teeth behind it. This is the fate of useful things. To work well is to be forgotten. A nail sticking out is famous, but not in a way anyone envies. You run your fingers along a window frame. The wood is cold. A faint draft slips through a gap, because no amount of iron has ever made a house perfectly obedient. Still, the frame remains in place. The shutter hangs. The shutter hangs. The sill does not wander off into the yard. Around you, fasteners turn loose materials into a shelter. Boards become walls. Planks become doors. Strips become stairs. Rafters become a roof. There is dark humor in how much depends on what cannot be seen. A family may boast of its fine beams, its carved chest, its polished table, while the nails do the unglamorous work of preventing all these dignities from becoming a pile. If a nail fails, suddenly everyone becomes very interested in nails. The shelf drops. The hinge sags. The roof leaks exactly above the bed of the person least philosophical about rain. At night, when the fire burns low, the hidden iron cools inside the structure. It contracts slightly. It rusts slowly where damp finds it. It stains wood in tiny halos. It holds through storms, quarrels, births, fevers, bad cooking, and long winters. You lie under the roof and hear a soft tick from the timbers. The house settles around you, not as one grand object, but as thousands of small agreements between wood and iron. Sleep comes easier when the ceiling remains where history put it. You leave the house and follow the nails into the wider world, where everything that moves, rolls, floats, or leaks seems to require iron in some troublesome form. The road is mud, the yard smells of horse and wet oak, and the harbor beyond it rocks under a gray morning sky. Here nails are no longer merely domestic. They become travelers, smugglers of strength, little black stitches in the fabric of trade. At the cooper's shop, barrel staves stand in a circle like gossiping neighbors drawn close around a secret. Hoops do much of the work, squeezing the wood into a vessel tight enough to hold flour, fish, beer, nails themselves, or whatever else must survive a journey with minimal escape. Yet small nails and rivets help secure hoops, lids, and repairs. A barrel is humble until it fails, at which point it becomes a public fountain of someone's profit. The cooper knows this. He taps, tightens, fastens, and listens, because leaks are merely holes with ambition. Near the wheelwright, wagon wheels lean against a wall, round promises waiting for roads to betray them. Wood forms hub, spoke, and felloe, but iron strengthens the rim, pins fittings, secures plates, and helps hold together the parts that will suffer every rut. Nails and spikes appear in the wagon bed, braces, boards, ironwork, and tool chest. A wagon is a box of arguments between motion and breakage. Every fastener takes a side. You watch a carter inspect his wheels before setting out. He touches a nail head here, a strap there, and kicks a spoke with professional pessimism. The load must reach market. The road will be unkind. Stones will strike from below. Rain will swell the wood, then sun will shrink it. because weather enjoys making carpentry look overconfident. If one fastening works loose, the wagon begins to sing the ancient song of impending expense. Down at the wharf, ships multiply the problem until it becomes almost grand. A hull is a forest rearranged to argue with the sea. Planks must be fastened to frames. Decking must be secured. Cabins, rails, hatches, bulkheads, ladders, chests, pumps, and fittings all need holding. In larger vessels, tree nails and complex joinery do much of the heavy work, while iron fastenings, spikes, bolts, and nails serve where needed, each chosen with care because salt water is a patient enemy. Iron in a ship is useful, but corrosion waits like a tax collector with excellent manners. The shipyard rings with heavier blows than the nailer's shop. Spikes are driven into timbers thick enough to seem offended. Men work in teams, mallets rising and falling. Tar, wacom, wet rope, bilge water, and smoke mingle in the air. A ship under construction looks majestic and uncomfortable, like a cathedral lying on its side with financial problems. Nails travel inside the cargo too. They are packed in kegs, sent upriver, carried across oceans, traded in settlements where a handful of iron may mean a repaired plow, a stronger gate, or a roof finished before snow. The nail is not only a fastener of things, it is a fastener of economies. It connects forge to shop, shop to wagon, wagon to port, port to distant hands. By evening, the road out of town is striped with wheel ruts, the barrels are stacked, and the tide lifts the hulls with a slow breath. Everywhere you look, wood has been given purpose by cutting, shaping, binding, and fastening. Nails hide in wagons, sleep in barrels, bite into decks, and tremble beneath iron-rimmed wheels. Small things, again, doing heavy work. The world moves because countless pieces have been convinced, often by force, not to fall apart at once. You arrive after the fire has finished being dramatic. It has eaten the roof, blackened the beams, broken the windows, and left that sour, wet smell of ashes after buckets and rain have done their work. Smoke still threads upward from stubborn places. The house is no longer a house, but it is not yet nothing. In the ruins, among the char, lie nails. This is where value reveals itself in a gloomy costume. If nails were cheap beyond thought, no one would bother. But iron has memory, and labor has price, so people come with pry bars, hammers, baskets, and soot-stiff gloves. They pick through burned boards and collapsed framing, looking for what can be saved. A nail that survived the fire may be straightened, sorted, sold, or used again where beauty has no vote. You step carefully. The ground is a bed of splinters, charcoal, broken crockery, and wet plaster. Every surface wishes to stain you. A beam shifts underfoot with a sigh that seems personal. You kneel beside a half-burned plank and pry at the nail head standing proud where the wood around them has burned away. Fire, with its usual bad manners, has done part of the carpenter's reverse labor. It has exposed the fasteners, loosened their grip, and destroyed nearly everything else. Pulling nails is not elegant. The claw of the hammer bites under a head. You rock it back. The nail groans from the wood, dragging black fibers with it. Sometimes it comes free intact, curved only slightly, like a finger beckoning from a bad dream. Sometimes the head snaps off, and the shank remains, buried and smug. Sometimes the whole thing bends into a shape no honest tool requested. You toss the salvageable ones into a basket. They land with a dull, ashy clatter. Abandoned buildings offer slower picking. A deserted barn, a collapsed shed, a fence line forgotten under weeds, all become stores of iron for those with time and need. Boards are pulled apart, not only for lumber, but for the nails inside them. Old nails are heated and straightened. Heads are judged. Points are coaxed back into usefulness. Even a rusty nail may serve in a gate, a coop, a repair hidden behind a shed where pride rarely visits. There is a strange intimacy in dismantling a place. You discover how it was held together. Here, many small nails for lath, There, larger spikes in a sill. A row of roofing nails along a charred rafter. A hinge fastened with iron that outlived the door it once swung. The building's secrets are not romantic. Mostly they are fasteners, bad cuts, repairs made in haste, and one corner that should have worried everyone much earlier. People in later times would tell stories of families burning old structures just to gather the nails. Whether every tale is true matters less than the truth beneath it. Nails were valuable enough to imagine such salvage as sensible. Fire could turn a worn-out building into a grim harvest. The thought is both practical and bleak, which is how history often enters the room, wipes its boots poorly, and sits near the hearth. By dusk, your basket is heavier, your sleeves smell of smoke. Your hands are black, and tiny cuts sting where soot has found them. Behind you, the ruin settles into the evening, relieved of some of its iron bones. The recovered nails are ugly, bent, scorched, and accused of crimes, yet they may hold again. That is their quiet resilience. A nail can pass through fire, be pulled from wreckage, straightened on an anvil, and sent back into wood, as if disasters are merely delays in fastening one more thing to another. You are standing in the ribs of a house that has already lived one life, and is now being persuaded, board by board, to become something else. The roof is half gone. The afternoon light lies in dusty stripes across the floor. Every footstep makes the old timbers complain in a tired, personal way, as if the building has opinions about being taken apart. No one here is careless with nails. That would be extravagance. And extravagance is for people who do not have to pull their wealth out of rotten wood with a claw hammer. You watch a man sit on an overturned beam, knees wide, hat low, worrying a blackened nail free from a plank. It comes slowly, bending like an old finger. He taps it straight against a stone, squints at it, and drops it into a leather pouch with the soft, important sound of a coin. This is the strange economy of reused nails, where a crooked little spike can still have a future. A nail may fasten a barn door, then a smokehouse shelf, then a pigpen gate, then perhaps the lid of a box that smells strongly of onions and regret. It may pass through more honest labor than the person who owns it. Some nails are so often pulled and straightened that they carry small scars along their shanks, bright at the edges, dark in the grooves, like tiny veterans of domestic warfare. You help, because everyone helps. Your palms grow sore from gripping cold iron. The pry bar slips, and a splinter slides neatly beneath your thumbnail, which is the sort of historical detail no grand portrait remembers. The air tastes of dust, mouse nests, and rain trapped for years inside timber. Somewhere outside, a chicken is making the urgent noise of a creature who has discovered nothing at all. When a building is abandoned, neighbors may quietly notice its nails before they notice its beams. In some places, old houses are burned not simply to clear the land, but to sift the ashes for iron. Imagine the scene after the flames have eaten everything soft. Men and children stooping with rakes through gray cinders, looking for the dark points that survived. It is treasure hunting, if treasure leaves soot on your sleeves and makes you cough. Even a bent nail has value because the iron in it took labor to win, transport, heat, hammer, and sell. A new nail means money leaving the household. A reused nail means thrift remaining stubbornly indoors. It is not glamorous thrift. It does not arrive in polished ledgers. It arrives as a jar by the hearth, a pouch in the shed, a rusty handful on the windowsill. It smells faintly metallic, damp, and suspicious. You begin to see nails differently. They are no longer invisible. They are a second currency hiding inside walls, fences, stools, coffins, wagons, and doors. A good house is not only shelter. It is a bank made of boards, with iron deposits driven deep into every joint. By evening, the pile of salvaged nails is small but satisfying. Some are straight enough for good work. Some are fit only for crude repairs. Some should perhaps be retired with honors, though history rarely provides pensions for hardware. You rub a thumb across one flattened head, feel the cold bite of it, and understand that reuse is not merely poverty. It is memory with a practical edge. The old house settles lower as the light fades. Its boards will go elsewhere. Its nails will go elsewhere. Nothing is finished, exactly. Everything is only waiting to be fastened again. You begin the morning with confidence, which is always dangerous in a world held together by handmade iron. The sky is pale. The yard is damp, and the wagon stands waiting with its wheel repaired, its boards tightened, its horse watching you with the expression of a judge who has seen this case before. Today should be simple. You have grain to move, a fence rail to mend, and perhaps, if fortune is feeling unusually polite, an hour in the evening when no object breaks. Then the bad nail makes itself known. It is not dramatic at first. A plank shifts under your boot with a dull little pop. You look down and see the nailhead sitting proud of the wood, lifted just enough to catch leather, cloth, flesh, or hope. Someone drove it too shallow, or the iron was weak, or the point bent sideways inside the board and never truly held. There are many ways for a nail to betray you, and history has generously provided examples of all of them. You fetch a hammer. The handle is smooth where many hands have worried it. You set the nail head, strike, and feel that unpleasant bounce that travels up the wrist. The nail does not go in, it folds. Slowly, with almost comic dignity, it bends over like a tired reed. The horse blinks. You suspect the horse is enjoying this. A bad nail can ruin a good day, because it is small enough to be overlooked and important enough to cause trouble. In a door hinge, it can make the door sag and scrape the threshold every morning until the sound becomes part of your character. In a shoe, it can prick a horse and turn a journey into limping misery. In a roof shingle, it can loosen just enough for rain to find the bed, the cradle, the flour sack, and that one corner where you unwisely stored your least replaceable belongings. You pry it out. The board resists. A splinter rises and tears the skin near your knuckle. The nail comes free at last, crooked and dark, holding a curl of damp wood on its point. You examine it as if it might apologize. It does not. It is a nail. Its emotional range is limited. In the forge, a poor nail might begin as hurried work. The iron may be flawed, the heat uneven, the hammer blows careless, or the nail rod drawn too thin. A maker tired from long hours might shape a head that cracks away under pressure. A merchant might sell mixed quality in the same sack. A buyer might grumble, pay anyway, and later discover that thrift has teeth. There is discomfort in depending on small things. Your whole day may be delayed by a sliver of iron no longer than a finger joint. The wagon cannot be trusted. The grain waits. The clouds gather with the smug patience of weather that knows roofs are imperfect. You straighten, stretch your back, and feel the ache of labor made heavier by repetition. At last, you choose another nail from the jar. This one is straighter, cleaner, with a better head. You set it carefully. Tap first, then strike. The point bites. The shank sinks. The board tightens against the frame. There is a small solid sound, not loud, but reassuring, the sound of an object agreeing to do its duty. The day has been bruised, not destroyed. You load the wagon a little later than planned. The horse steps forward. Behind you, the repaired plank holds. For now, that is enough. In the old world, peace often arrives this way, not as triumph, but as one good nail behaving itself. You are inside a small room where work has followed the family home and taken a seat by the fire. The light is low. Smoke has found its usual place in the rafters. A pot mutters softly over the hearth, and beside it, on a block scarred by old blows, thin rods of iron wait to become nails. Outside, the road is mud. Inside, the air is heat, metal, wool, stale bread, and the sour patience of people doing necessary things. Nail-making was not always the grand, dramatic labor of a lone blacksmith glowing in the forge like a saint of sparks. Much of it could be smaller, poorer, domestic, and relentless. In nail-making districts, families worked together. Men might prepare the iron rods, but women and children often cut, headed, sorted, carried, counted, and bundled. The house became workshop, nursery, kitchen, and warehouse, which sounds efficient until you remember that efficiency often means there is nowhere clean to sit. You are given a task because idle hands are treated with suspicion. A child near you works with the serious expression of someone old enough to be tired and too young to complain success. The rhythm is simple in theory. Heat the rod, cut the length, form the head, drop the nail, again, 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 then. The body learns before the mind approves. Shoulders round, eyes sting. Fingers grow clumsy in the cold spaces between heat. A woman at the block moves with steady skill. Her sleeves are darkened at cuffs. She knows how to waste no movement. She can judge a nail by sight, by weight, perhaps by the mean little sound it makes when it lands. She has other work waiting. Food, washing, mending, nursing, bargaining, remembering who has eaten and who is pretending not to be hungry. The nails do not excuse her from any of it. They merely add iron to the list. The humor here is thin but present, like weak ale. Someone jokes that the baby will learn to count by nails before prayers. Someone else says that if the roof leaks, at least they can make more leaks official by fastening them properly. A child drops a nail into the ashes, and everyone searches for it because even losing one feels like dropping a crumb in famine. At last it is found, blackened, smug, and almost too hot to touch. Household nail work could blur the border between skill and drudgery. It required practice, attention, and endurance, yet it was often paid poorly, especially when middlemen controlled prices and supplied materials. The family might produce thousands of small pieces, each one counted, weighed, inspected, and still the coins received could seem insultingly light. You can imagine the silence after payment, the quick mental subtraction of rent, flour, coal, shoes, and debt. You sit near the hearth as evening presses against the window. The room is crowded not only with people, but with obligation. The fire warms one side of your face while the other remains chilly. Your eyes follow the nails accumulating in a shallow tray. They are dull, sharp, uneven, and numerous. Each carries a moment of someone's time, a bent back, a child's cough, a woman's hand pausing only long enough to push hair from her cheek. When at last the work slows, the room does not become quiet immediately. Metal still ticks as it cools. The pot still sighs. Someone rubs a wrist. Someone counts under their breath. The nails lie there like a small iron harvest, gathered indoors, grown from heat and need. You arrive at market with mud on your hem, smoke in your hair, and a small packet of needs folded into your pocket. Salt, thread, perhaps a hinge if the price is merciful, and nails. Always nails. The market square is already awake. Hooves slap the wet stones. Barrels thud. A woman argues over onions with the calm ferocity of a barrister. Somewhere a goose is expressing legal objections to being owned. At the ironmonger's stall, the nails sit in boxes and sacks, sorted by size, purpose, and the seller's opinion of your ability to pay. There are little brads for delicate work, longer nails for boards, stout spikes that seem less like fasteners and more like threats. You reach toward them and smell iron, damp wood, leather, horse sweat, and coins handled by too many anxious fingers. The price of nails is not simply the price of nails. It is the price of ore dug from the ground, charcoal burned in quantity, fuel hauled through bad roads, furnaces maintained, bars forged, rods slit or drawn, labor performed, merchants paid, taxes endured, ships risked, wagons delayed, and everyone along the way insisting with some justification that they too must eat. By the time a handful of nails reaches this stall, it has dragged half the world behind it. You ask the price and try not to react. Reacting is how sellers discover weakness. The ironmonger names a figure. You consider whether the shed roof can survive another season of creative leaning. You consider whether the gate can be tied with rope. Again, you consider the moral character of rain, which is low. Iron has moods in the marketplace. War can lift its price. Bad roads can lift its price. Scarcity of charcoal can lift its price. Demand from shipyards, armies, towns, plantations, mills, and farms can pull it in competing directions. A nail is humble, but it belongs to a restless economy. When iron grows dear, every repair becomes a negotiation with decay. The seller lets a few nails fall from one hand into the other. They click together like small, stern decisions. He tells you these are good nails, not the miserable sort that split, bend, or lose their heads like politicians in a difficult season. You would laugh more if you were not counting coins inside your sleeve. Beside you, another customer buys in bulk for a carpenter's shop and leaves with a sack heavy enough to make his shoulder dip. Wealth, today, looks like leaving with more iron than you came for. You choose fewer than you wanted. This is the mathematics of ordinary life. The roof receives priority over the shelf, the gate over the bench, the present leak over the future inconvenience. The ironmonger weighs the nails. The scale tips, steadies, and judges you. Coins pass from your palm to his. They are warm from your body. They will not remain yours long enough to cool. As you tuck the packet away, you feel its weight, modest but real. Each nail is a decision already paid for. Each one must be used wisely. No idle hammering. No foolish splitting of boards. No driving where a peg would do. The market continues around you, loud and damp and full of appetites. But in your pocket is a little bundle of future repairs, and for now, that is the form hope has taken, sharp, black, expensive, and wrapped in brown paper. You hear the machine before you properly see it. The sound comes through the workshop walls in hard little blows, faster than a hammer in a human hand, less musical than a forge, more impatient. It clacks, bites, presses, and releases. Clack, bite, press, release. The rhythm is so regular that it feels almost rude. Human labor at least has the decency to cough, swear, pause, and reconsider. Inside, the air is warm with oil, iron filings, coal smoke, and damp wool steaming from the men gathered near the entrance. A strip of iron feeds toward the jaws of the machine. Blades shear it. A die forms a head. A nail drops into a box. Then another. Then another. They fall quickly, with an eager little rattle that makes older nail makers shift their weight and narrow their eyes. Progress has arrived wearing grease. You stand among people who are not sure whether to be impressed, offended, or afraid. A machine that cuts nails can produce them in numbers that seem almost indecent. Cut nails, sliced from iron plate or strip, are not the same as hand-forged nails, but they are useful, straight enough, cheap enough, and numerous enough to disturb the sleep of anyone whose income depends on a hammer and practiced wrist. One man says the machine makes ugly nails. Another says customers care less about beauty when the price drops. A third says it will break down before winter, which is a comforting prophecy often spoken near new inventions. The machine continues to work, apparently unmoved by criticism. This is one of the irritating qualities of machinery. You watch the operator adjust a lever. His fingers are careful, because progress is perfectly willing to remove them. The gears turn with exposed confidence. The floor trembles faintly. A box of fresh nails fills in a time that would have meant long hours at the hearth or forge. Their edges are sharper, their sides flatter, their heads more uniform. They look less like individuals and more like a crowd with the same unpleasant purpose. Early nail machines did not conquer the world in a single glorious afternoon. They were improved, copied, doubted, modified, resisted, and cursed at. Some worked better than others. Some produced nails fit for certain tasks, but not all. Hand-forged nails remained important where strength, shape, or tradition demanded them. Yet the direction was clear enough to make the room uneasy. Once a thing can be made faster, cheaper, and in greater quantity, the old way does not vanish immediately. It begins to be priced into sorrow. You think of the cottage rooms where children sorted nails by firelight. You think of the smith, whose arm knew the measure of every blow. You think of merchants recalculating, builders smiling, households buying more for less, and workers discovering that the future has excellent teeth. Still, there is wonder here. You cannot deny it. The machine is crude, loud, oily, and dangerous, but it turns iron into usefulness with astonishing speed. A box that was empty now holds hundreds of sharp possibilities. Roofs, floors, crates, fences, ships, houses, and factories themselves will demand more. The machine answers as machines do, without poetry, without pity, and without needing supper. When you step back outside, the evening air feels softer. Behind you, the clacking continues, steady as a new kind of weather. You carry the sound with you, not in your ears only, but in the uneasy place where habit meets change. Somewhere, a hand hammer rises and falls more slowly. Somewhere else, a nail drops from a machine, and another, and another. At first, cheap nails do not look like revolution. They look like a barrel in a store, a crate in a builder's yard, a handful tossed casually onto a bench, without anyone flinching at the cost. They look like ordinary abundance, which is the most disguised form of change. Yesterday, a nail was worth saving from ashes. Today, a bent one might be swept aside with the shavings, an act so luxurious, it would make your thriftier ancestors sit upright in their graves and ask for an explanation. You are walking through a growing town where wood is arriving in stacks, wagons, rafts, and carts. Boards lean against half-framed walls. Sawdust softens the mud. Hammers ring from every direction, no longer slow isolated blows, but a busy weather of construction. Cheap nails have not built this world alone, but they have made it easier to fasten together quickly. A carpenter near you drives nail after nail without pausing to consider each one as a personal financial decision. Tap, strike, sink, tap, strike, sink. The rhythm is brisk, almost cheerful. His apron pocket holds more nails than a rural household might once have guarded through a winter. He drops one. It lands in the dirt. He does not stop. Somewhere, a ghost of careful economy makes a noise like a disappointed ant. Cheaper nails change building. They make lighter framing more practical. Speed repairs, simplify crates and boxes, encourage fences, floors, siding, shingles, furniture, scaffolds, and temporary structures meant to rise fast and perhaps not last forever. They help goods travel because boxes can be made in numbers. They help settlements spread because houses and barns can be assembled with less time spent begging iron to behave. They also change attitudes. When fasteners are scarce, every joint is a small negotiation. When fasteners are cheap, design loosens its belt. People try things. They add rooms, shelves, sheds, porches, stalls, partitions, signs, packing cases, and improvised contraptions that should possibly have remained thoughts. The world becomes more nailed together, and therefore more rearrangeable. Not all changes are graceful. Cheap nails mean more building, and more building means more forests cut into boards, more waste, more noise, more towns smelling of fresh lumber, smoke, livestock, and ambition. It means people can throw up structures quickly, sometimes too quickly, with corners that admit wind and floors that teach you where every knot lies. Abundance is useful, but it has a habit of multiplying both comfort and clutter. You step inside a new house before the plaster is finished. The studs are exposed. Light enters between boards. The floor smells of sap. Each nail head catches a dull glint. There are hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, holding up the ordinary promise of rooms. A place to sleep, cook, quarrel, recover, store boots, misplace needles, and avoid weather with mixed success. You place your palm on the wall. It is rough and cool. Behind the board, nails disappear into wood, doing their work without ceremony. That is part of what changed. The nail became less visible as it became common. Its drama faded into usefulness. No one praises the nail when the shelf holds. No one thanks the nail when the roof remains attached. Like many dependable things, it is noticed mostly in failure. Even so, cheap nails made a quiet opening in daily life. They shortened certain labors, widened certain possibilities, and helped turn shelter into something more rapidly repeatable. The old nail, rare and precious, belonged to a world of caution. The cheap nail belonged to a world beginning to hurry. Outside, the town keeps hammering itself into shape. The sound travels down the street, bright and persistent, like rain made of iron. The forge is quieting now. Not silent, not yet, but softened around the edges. The day's heat lingers in the bricks. The coals breathe a low red breath beneath ash. Outside, evening has folded itself over the lane, the fields, the roofs, and the uneven fences that have spent the day holding back animals, neighbors, and disorder. You stand near the anvil as the smith prepares one last nail. There is no hurry in him now. The urgent work is finished. The horse has been shod, the hinge repaired, the wagon strap mended, the customer disappointed by the price, but not surprised. Only a small rod of iron remains at the edge of the fire, warming toward orange in the dim light. He lifts it with tongs. The metal glows like a coal taught to be useful. On the anvil, it lengthens under the hammer. Each blow is measured. Not the wild ringing of legend, but a steady conversation between hand, tool, and heat. The point forms first, tapering cleanly. Then the shank, then the head, shaped with careful taps. A nail is such a modest thing to receive such attention. That may be why it feels almost tender. You have followed nails through their harder stories. Costly iron, sore hands, smoky rooms, market worries, bad repairs, machines clacking in oily rooms, towns rising under a weather of hammers. You have seen them saved from ashes, counted by children, argued over by buyers, and dropped unnoticed when the world grew rich enough to be careless. The nail has been treasure, nuisance, tool, trade, good, danger, and joke. It has done all this while remaining merely a small dark line with a head. The smith finishes the last one and lets it cool. It darkens slowly, losing its orange glow, as if sleep is passing through it. For a moment, it lies alone on the anvil, still warm, faintly scaled, newly made. It has not yet fastened anything. It has not split a board, held a latch, pierced a boot, saved a roof, or offended a carpenter. Its future is folded inside it, quiet and sharp. The forge smells of coal smoke, iron, leather, sweat, and damp night air under the door. Your own body is tired in the old familiar places. Shoulders, hands, lower back, the small muscles around the eyes. History often arrives as fatigue, as soot in the nose, as a thumbnail bruised by honest clumsiness, as the tiny ache left by necessary work. The smith sets the nail in a wooden tray with others made that day. They rest together without ceremony. Tomorrow they may leave in a pouch, wrapped in cloth, or counted into a buyer's palm. They may go to a barn, a cradle, a coffin, a door, a ship, a shelf. The nail does not choose. It simply holds. Now the fire is covered. The tools are laid down. The anvil, so loud a little while ago, becomes a dark shape in the room. Outside, the night insects begin their thin music. The road is no longer busy. Windows glow faintly, and then, one by one, grow dim. You can leave the last nail there in your thoughts, cooling in the hush. Small, ordinary, almost weightless, yet carrying the memory of ore, forest, flame, labor, money, weather, shelter, and hands. So many lives have depended on things no larger than a finger. So much of the world has been held together quietly. Let the forge fade now. Let the hammer rest. Let every roof beam and gate hinge and floorboard keep its own patient watch in the dark. The last hand-forged nail cools, and the night settles gently around it, holding everything in place.